Brilliant. Thank you to the contributors there for their stories. Absolutely wonderful to hear that. You know, very difficult perhaps to talk about these things, but very important to do so. As Helena said earlier, you know, we've got to capture people's stories during these difficult times so that we can improve things for people moving forwards. We've got one more story, and I'm delighted to have Mary speaking to us live from North Wales, talking about experiences of her husband living in a care home and how it's affected your relationship together during the pandemic. So Mary, thank you so much for joining us live, and over to you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you. I'm representing myself, my husband, and also Tide, which is Together in Dementia Every Day, and it's a charity that empowers carers and former carers of dementia really to use their voice in a powerful way to bring about real change. So I'm going to read my story, otherwise I'll go completely off piste and forget what I want to say. So I'm going to read it to you. So my husband, Mike, who is 72, has Alzheimer's and mixed dementia and is in residential care. He's been in this particular care home for a year now, although he first entered residential care in September 2017. The last 12 months has been unlike any other I've experienced in my lifetime, and I suspect for you too. Coronavirus, COVID-19, or the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, struck a few weeks after Mike entered the home. Those few weeks before lockdown allowed me time to get to know the home, its carers, their routines, and to help Mike settle in. And I visited most days, determined that this time things were going to work out, hopefully for it to be his forever home. It had been a very rocky journey, going to hospital, a care home, and then back to hospital. He was sectioned twice into and then at several months in an acute psychiatric ward in the hospital, and then finally this place. So we'd had a bit of a rough ride. I've never really liked the phrase forever home, but when we moved to Anglesey in 2011 to begin our retirement in our forever home, little did we know what was in store for us, a journey of a most unexpected kind. Anyway, then lockdown. The care home locked down swiftly and before most other care homes in the country. And we all know what happened next. Nothing for ages. We're now more than halfway through March, and guess what? We're still in lockdown, albeit slowly emerging, blinking into the sunshine. Lockdown 3 apparently, though it has felt continual for me as far as visiting Mike is concerned, with a few haphazard socially distanced visits over summer and autumn. Mike didn't cope too well with the visits. He couldn't understand why he wasn't allowed to sit next to me or hug me, come home with me. Many times I left the garden or building, not looking back, tears in my eyes and crying on my way home, which is a 45-minute drive. I couldn't get past the thought that he thought I had left him and deserted him. I didn't care, because why else would I behave this way? I tried to explain that the Prime Minister had said that nobody could visit while the virus was making people poorly. I'm still saying that to him. Since the beginning of November, I've seen Mike 3 times, face mask to screen. I saw him a week before Christmas. And the home then were beginning to do rapid testing for relatives. And so I was tested, sat in the car for half an hour, and then was allowed into the visiting area and the reception. I was allowed to sit next to him, hold his hand, hug him and kiss him on the cheek. It took him a while to realize that he could do this. And I had to physically show him how to hug again. Mike, this is, who everyone said is the best hugger they know. When he felt his arms around me, he remembered what to do, and he hugged me and patted my bottom in the way he'd always done. Needless to say, again, it was a very emotional experience for me. I hadn't touched him since February 2020, and the tears flowed. Even the carers said that they had cried, seeing relatives enjoying physical contact again with their loved ones. The day after that, lockdown happened again, and that was that. A lovely Christmas present, but left you wanting more. Last week, I saw Mike again for the first time since before Christmas. I am allowed a 15-minute visit once a week, socially distanced. This time, there was no screen. We sat at opposite ends of the table, I in an outer reception area and him in the inner one. I was wearing a face mask and gloves. Mike has had both vaccinations now, I've only had one. I was allowed to hold hands, but I couldn't reach him, and he wasn't inclined to reach out to touch mine until just as I was leaving. I understand the caution taken by the care home, but we still can't go in, and the visit is stilted and difficult. I have to say that throughout this time, the carers have been amazing, welcoming my daily phone calls, keeping me informed, FaceTime, sending photos, etc., doing their very best to keep us in touch. At some point in November, Mike's meds were tweaked. The consultant came along and changed things. Whatever she did, a small miracle occurred. The staff started to tell me how Mike's temperament was changing for the better, and they felt that they were beginning to see his real character emerging, and I could see this too. I'd been feeling very anxious about him as he wasn't eating well, he wasn't very sociable, and he was spending a great deal of time in bed sleeping. He'd lost weight, and he was looking permanently anxious and unhappy. Also, he was barely speaking. Now, he's appearing cheerful and relaxed and trying to tell me things. The FaceTimes and phone calls continue, and I'm much more relaxed too, knowing that finally, after a couple of years, Mike seems to be settled, quite happy, and enjoying socializing in the home, much more like the Mike I know and love. I'm so happy about this. I often wonder how I would have coped through the pandemic if he'd been at home, with no daycare or respite, no socializing, being on our own for most of the time. I have friends who are caring for their loved ones at home, some with paid carers coming in, some without professional support. They're on their knees without daycare and respite, and I really feel for them. Mike is in the best place. He has a better social life than I have at the moment, and I'm pleased for him. I have to look at it like this, despite the fact that now his family, the care home, mostly doesn't have me in it. I'm on the outside looking in, trusting the care of one of the most important people in my life to others whom I don't really know. I have very little input now, and it's so hard, but I have to look at it positively and believe and know that he is safe and well. But at what cost? This time in Mike's life is precious, and not being able to see each other is a huge loss. I've made every effort to help Mike to remember who I am by my phone calls and visits and cards and special parcels, but it's so hard to keep the emotional and physical support and knowledge alive when we can't meet properly. Time is running out. We've heard that earlier today. I can't bear the thought that I might never be able to visit Mike in his room again, sit next to him, hug and kiss him, and spend precious time together. Already, so much has been lost. I hope and pray that there is light at the end of the tunnel now we've had the vaccination and testing is possible. Relatives and residents have to be allowed to see each other. It's inhuman not to allow this. I've been very understanding throughout about the necessity to keep residents safe, which is obvious. The care home have done an excellent job in protecting their home, and I applaud them totally for this. But my patience is beginning to wear thin. I need to be able to see Mike and he me. I've had lots of emotional support through this, but he's only had very good, loving care, not the special love and affection that can only come from his family. He needs it, and I desperately need to give him this before it's too late. And I hope and pray that it will come soon. I'm not alone in thinking this, as you know. There are moves from various organisations and individual people who are all believing the same thing. The government are well aware of this. It's a basic fundamental human right to be able to be free to love and be loved, especially in social care situations. Recently, this is a bit of a postscript really, I delivered some necessities and treats to Mike, and I left them in reception, as I usually do. But while I was there, I took the opportunity to ring him from the car park, hoping that the carers could bring him to wave through the lounge window upstairs. A staff member from the lounge window downstairs then shouted through the window to me to say that I'm not allowed to do that. I went over and had a conversation with her, and then came away feeling that I'd done something naughty. On the way home, I began to feel how ridiculous it was at my age, which is 69, to be told I couldn't wave to my husband through the window. Surely things have to change soon. And I do write poetry. I do a lot of things to keep my well-being and myself physically fit. And I write poetry. And I wrote one recently about as though I'm talking to the carer in the home after this year of lockdowns. And I'm going to read the poem too, if you would allow me to. So here I am talking to the carers. The way he looks at you is how he once looked at me. You have taken my place now. You perform all those intimate tasks that I once did. He would look to me for reassurance, affirmation, love, and affection. But now his eyes search yours for the same. Almost a year since I shared his space, arranged his things, walked and sat with him. Whose idea was it to squash our lives with a Monty Python giant foot out of the sky? Why is it all right to stop all human contact, but not all right to wave to him through a window? Since when has waving to someone through a window become an infringement of the rules? Me, a 69-year-old wife, made to feel embarrassed, ridiculous, and naughty. That is not okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy to see you caring, to hear your interest in his well-being, to trust you to be his nearby family, while his faraway family can't be there. And this gives me comfort to know. Just under the surface, though, lies the grief and sorrow of losing him before time. All I can hope is for another chance to take your place. Well, thank you for listening. That's it.